future. Thank you for all being here. I'm Nilmini Rubin. I'm the Chief of Staff and Head of Global Policy for Hedera. Thank you for all being here. We're in for a treat with our panelists tonight. We are going to be talking about sustainability and how sustainability is rooted in Hedera, in our platform. We are focusing on climate and ESG innovation, and we're going to hear perspectives from our governing council. So right here we have Tasca, the head of global strategy and transformation for ServiceNow. He focuses on the next phase in a connected world where transparent work will define a company's ability to prosper by leveraging blockchain, 5G, and AI. He is the author of 87 patents. 87 patents. And next up we have Andy Gastwirth. He's the Chief Innovation Officer for DLA Piper, where he drives digital transformation strategy at the firm, and he's ranked Imagining the Legal Industry by adopting emerging technologies and new approaches to legal and consulting services. He is also a very accomplished guitarist. Dr. Paolo Tasca is a professor of digital technologies and business strategy at the University College of London, where he's also the executive director of the UCL Center for Blockchain Technologies. He's been an advisor on DLT to many international organizations like the EU Parliament and United Nations, and he is a blockchain entrepreneur, co-founder of the blockchain unicorn Quant, and he's a patent holder as well of Overlook. So I had the chance of talking to our panelists in advance of this and realized that they were all looking for a public permission blockchain that was well governed to think about their sustainability solution. So I wanted to just start with Tasca. What are the inherent advantages of adopting DLT for ESG?
Well, when it comes right down to it, it's not just sustainability. Because if you really look at it, sustainability is just a part of ESG. You have to look at it holistically. You cannot do sustainability without governance. If you aren't doing things for the environment, you're not doing things for sustainability, and therefore you aren't governing what needs to be done for the future. So, good enough?
Yes, it's more than yes.
Yeah, I'd like to add on to that. When I talk to C-level folks at large organizations, and many of the clients at DLA Piper are Fortune 500 and other companies like that, one of the things that I first have to talk to them about when we're talking about sustainability is you can look at governance, the G, and focus on that, because if you don't run a business that is actually sustainable from a profitability standpoint and from a business standpoint, you can never pull along the E and the S components, the environmental and the social parts of it. And when I'm talking to these people, and I show them that you actually can engage in projects that not only are profitable and optimize business, but also have sustainability that caters to the environmental and the social aspects of it too. So having more of a well-rounded discussion, and knowing your audience, and knowing that you need to keep with business people, especially in enterprise, it being a business discussion and don't let it become a technical discussion is a really important way to help drive sustainability within those organizations. And I really do believe that if we don't pull the enterprise businesses along to really be involved in heavily driving sustainability, we're going to have a very hard time of gaining momentum overall in the initiative.
Yeah, I would like to add something about, I want to be less academic as possible, but I like to see blockchain across two lenses. We are used to see blockchain through the lens of ICT technology as a multi-master state machine replication mechanism that allow us to achieve consensus on different things. And these things can be digitized assets, can be carbon credits, can be track and trace of goods, and so on and so forth. These are very good application for ESG. But the other thing that we are sometimes missing is the other lens, which is from an institutional economics point of view. DLT is a fantastic technology that drives basically transparency and decentralization on the decision-making process, shifting decision-making process power to the edge of the network. This is already an achievement if you think about in the ESG terms. And if you think about an organization that commit itself and put some business processes, steps in a blockchain, maybe enforced, validated, verified by smart contracts, this is fantastic, and I think we are going there. And this is the last part that I think the company should explore in the years to come. We already have first attempts of decentralized autonomous organizations, which are basically being developed already since 2015. But I think the business practices will go massively into that direction.
So, Andy and Tasca, where do you see the opportunities are for sustainability on a platform that's well governed like Hedera?
So just in full disclosure, I am committee chair of the Corporate Utilization Committee, CorpCom, and what we actually do is we bring use cases from the overall ecosystem in Hedera. Some of them can be sustainability, some of them could be in other areas, but we help refine those use cases and help get them to market. And what we've seen is that more and more, as we have our CorpCom meetings every other week, there is some element of every use case that is actually driving sustainability. So I would say almost every business use case that we see. But the two that really are, I think, the biggest opportunities, and when you talk about a mix of smaller organizations as well as the enterprise, would be in the areas of circular economies and managing complex supply chains. And I think that, whether you're here representing a large company or a small company, when you look at the responsibility that you will have as an organization for your complete supply chain, you need to be looking at ways that you can get rid of intermediaries, have that auditable and traceable and transparency that Hedera has, and bring that into your solution. It's not a technical discussion, again, it's a business discussion, and being able to prove out your business with the technology.
So to add to that, there's actually stuff that I want to hit from both of you guys. If you really look at it, what is Hedera made of? We have a great consortium of companies that own assets. They build assets. They put assets together. And by putting these assets together, they have liabilities on those assets. You have consumption aspects, you have carbon aspects, you have how do you build it? What is the net effect of all of that? Well, what can you do when you collaborate across all of these different consortium members? I am actually one of the board members of Hedera, and I'm very lucky to be there. We're really looking at how we collaborate holistically, and because it's funny, I'm looking over at Brian over here, and the whole idea is, he's from Boeing, and we're all looking at how we can collaborate and put things together in a great way, because it's not going to be, to Andy's point, it's a circular economy. Another way to look at that, it's a business network. When you look at supply chains, no one company does everything. You've got this aspect of, okay, it takes a village. Well, it takes a bunch of companies coming together to make that village work, right? So that's what Hedera is offering. It is the one place that has all of the companies coming together, creating that collaboration and enabling that work, right? And what is ServiceNow all about? How do we make the world work? So we love this fact that it's public, permissioned, and everybody can see, it's transparent, we can trust what's going on, only on Hedera.
Yeah, and just adding one thing, when we talk about companies, it's not just companies that are part of the Hedera ecosystem, it's also academic institutions. And when every time I talk to a C-level person, they tell me, well, what's the business aspect of Hedera? Why would I use that? I reference, if you look at the UCL chart back there and the stats of why Hedera is actually better, that is owed to the academic institutions that participate in Hedera.
Yeah, I think, as a UCL, we started the center, we were one of the first in the world back in 2015. It's one of the largest ranking top 7 in the world, number 1 in the UK, of course. We have been working with many layer 1 blockchain infrastructure providers, and with Hedera since 2019, if I'm not wrong, 20. Personally speaking, I have to declare that I'm also in the tokenomics committee of Hedera, so we study what is, all the concepts about economics aspects of the ecosystem of Hedera, and token dynamics, rewards, emission rates, these type of things. But my personal experience, I want to share, talking about governance more than going back to the ESG, is that I've never seen, since, I'm into blockchain since 2011, my first startup was set up in Zurich in 2011. I've never seen such transparent governance and open governance that I've seen in Hedera. All the minutes or the board meetings are published. You can go online, you can download, and you can read yourself. You don't need to be inside the company to look at what we discussed during the meetings of the council members. So I challenge everyone to find another blockchain that publish this type of amount of, have such level of transparency in terms of governance, in terms of financial disclosure. And I think this is my takeaway from the governance side of the
So I have a follow-up question for Paolo.
Yes.
Like looking at your UCL research, how do the different blockchains rate on ESG? Where does Hedera fall?
I was kind of ready. I have a few tables here. You cannot read that. I can barely read myself. So we have done this study in 2021. We have a new one now going out, which is basically an updated version of that study, which we will include the top 50 POS blockchain in CoinMarketCap. A draft version, I think, is already online today. You can go to Social Science Research Network and download for free, of course. And you can comment, criticize, and provide your comments to the audience. What we did here is simply try to understand what is happening in the blockchain space. At that time, there were not much research about the energy consumption. There was a lot of fuss, if you want, about the Bitcoin energy consumption. And everybody, many regulators, I have been a regulator myself. I was working for the Central Bank of Germany, Deutsche Bundesbank, for 2.5 years. So I took also that hat back in time. So many regulators were comparing at that time a lot of many blockchains with Bitcoin. So they needed help in education, and that's why we embarked in this type of research. What we discovered basically is the following, very simple. So I have a table here, basically it's updated from a couple of days ago from the new study that is out now in SSRN, as I mentioned before. So Hedera is ranked in the global energy consumption number 1. So the kilowatt that is consumed is, I would say, less than the kilowatt that they needed to run the network than my house. My literally, I'm not 2 hours, maybe my house. 6.45 kilowatts on average. And if you look at this is basically 140 times less than Solana, 70 times less than Ethereum, 16 times less than Hashgraph. What we were interested in that study, and this new study, is not the global energy needed to run the network, but is the energy per transaction throughput. So it's of course decreasing because more transactions you have, the less the more divide the energy consumption by the transactions. And of course, the more transactions you are capable to run and to process, the lower your impact in terms of carbon footprint. Also, in this respect, Hedera ranked number 1 with this table that was basically empirical observation from a few days ago. And the first and the second one, well, compared to Ethereum, is the 3,300 times less, impactful in terms of carbon footprint for transaction throughput. 1,100 times less than Algorand, and 172 times less than Solana. So it's an interesting achievement. We will continue this research because, of course, there is a competition going on among different blockchains, and I can see that with respect to the 2 years of work, we have seen some catching up of other blockchains. So it's good competition. It's good competition because first, all the layer 1 blockchain technologies toward these ESG goals. So I'm very happy to see this nice competition.
So, Andy, did you want to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, the low energy consumption and the speed of Hedera and the finality of the transactions, on its own, there's a lot of merit, but this is actually what allows enterprises and other organizations to look at using Hedera and make it economical. I had worked 4 years ago, 5 years ago, trying to build business solutions on Ethereum, and it was cost prohibitive. And on top of that, I could not get transactions times down to what would be viable for things like financial services or healthcare or other businesses. So this is, again, the discussion and the great data that's come out of the academic organizations within Hedera is that now we can show enterprises with a true business case with ROI, this is why you should move from a Web 2 or a traditional system onto Hedera, and it's going to be, again, not only more carbon friendly, but on top of that, it's going to be less expensive and it's going to help you optimize your business. And that becomes a very easy discussion to have with decision makers in those organizations.
So I'm going to switch a little bit. So as all of us know, there's been a little bit of turbulence in crypto, and
That's where we get yo-yos, right?
yeah, that's why you get the yo-yo. And policymakers are paying a lot more attention to what's happening in the blockchain space. So how are the emerging regulations and policies affecting the ability of DLTs to embrace the ESG opportunities? Tasca?
I can start it off. So we have our platform, Toko. It's an asset tokenization platform. We tokenize real-world assets. This includes also tokenizing carbon assets. If you're tokenizing assets and they're being delivered as a commodity, it is easier to do business. If you're securitizing an asset, then it becomes more challenging. And what we have really seen is there is usually a path from minting those tokens to an exchange. We do the traditional legal work and look at all the regulatory and compliance. But when we're talking to a client, they want to tokenize an asset, let's say real estate. Where is the asset located? What type of asset is it? Where are the investors coming from? And is there a broker-dealer? Is there a custodian? And is there an exchange in a given geography to match up with all that? And it can be a very tricky path to actually solving all those pieces of the puzzle. But in most cases, it is doable. But I think that what we've traditionally seen with every time there is an issue, not just crypto, in traditional financial markets, there's fraud or whatever it may be. The first thing that the regulatory bodies do is they take 10 steps back and go, we have to pause on everything and we'll work our way back. But I think as this industry matures and there is more governance and more control, and again, Hedera has been an excellent example of that, and that's why we were looked at so favorably by the SEC and other organizations, it will mature, it will settle down. A lot of the people who came in with nefarious ideas, bad actors, that will settle out and it will be more controlled. So it's just going to take some more time, but we are making progress.
Fantastic.
Well, it really comes back down to the fact that there are standards, right? How do you actually take those standards and apply them? How do you do it transparently? And you can see with, for example, Guardian, our tokenization engine, the standards are there. And the fact that it's all transparent and it all works, you're able to actually use it, everybody knows how it's being used, it's very clear, and then you don't have problems with compliance because people can see what you're doing and you're complying with what's currently available. So now a lot of standards in governance for coming out from the governing bodies, they're not clear yet, but the fact that we're actually ahead of the pack is leading that, we're helping from a lobby perspective, Nilmini is actually really involved in that. So being able to actually take that next step, really be able to be ahead of the game, help them say, hey, this is why Hedera is so good, because we're showing transparently how everything works. And when you have that capability, then you can actually enable everybody to see there is this value of trust, right? And without trust, you really can't do anything, whether it's in pursuit of your goals as an enterprise, getting that business use case, getting that outcome that you really want, because you can't do it from a transaction speed time or whatever it is. These are the things that actually come back to the core of everything. If you can't build the trust, you can't deal with it.
So I would like to jump on this question, but let me. I want to go back 1 second on the previous question about the governance, because on the study we are doing at UCL, which is not published, but is astonishing in terms of the governance model. We have projected a 5 years projection of about 400 nodes. Now we are roughly 30, something like that. And 400 nodes means equivalent to the size of Polkadot or Avalanche or other type of blockchain like that. And we have looked at the Nakamoto coefficient. Nakamoto coefficient tells you which is between 0 and 100, tell you the number of nodes that should collude in order to slow down the network. And if you look at the Hedera in 5 years from now, with such a bigger size of network, you will require at least 40%. And this is stable over time. And here I have a table from other blockchains. So for example, Solana, you just need 1.50% to collude, to slow down the network. It's not similar attack, it's slightly different, it's Nakamoto coefficient. Cosmos 4%, Polygon 2%. So 40% is one order of magnitude larger. So in terms of robustness of governance, even when the size of the network increases, it's tremendous. Because I received some question also yesterday, say, oh, but the network is small, let's see when the network will go up. I would recommend these people to look at the Nakamoto coefficient in our model, which is not yet published, but I'm happy to share privately, and to look at the Hashgraph consensus mechanism, which is a genius idea by Limo Bird, which is basically a virtualization of the voting mechanism. Basically, there is no validation process, because you don't need validation process, and the speed of the network is thanks to that innovation. So these two things together can answer a lot of questions about how the governance will be stable and remain solid even at the larger size of the network.
Thank you. So we have 5 minutes left, so I wanted to open it up for questions.
Hi, my name is Courtney. I work with venture capital firms. Hi, my name is Courtney, and I work with venture capital firms on ESG integration. So obviously this is a very hot topic, and I'm curious, what advice might you give early stage investors around ESG diligence for blockchain technologies, given what we know today, and given that they're a crucial piece of, what sees the light of day?
Thank you. Wait, before we answer, we're going to group a couple questions. So I saw some in the back, and I wanted to take all three at the same time for our panelists.
Hi, this is Max from Carbon-Based. We're building a carbon registry on Hedera. I'm super fascinated if the board members can share a bit of the participation in the governance process of Hedera and how that looks like, and what are the dynamics of that too.
And the third and last question for this round.
I think Hedera occupies a really unique place in the ecosystem because of the governing council. That business is driving it. And where I've also seen positive examples of business driving something was recently at COP Montreal, where business leaders led policy advocacy on nature impact disclosures. And talking about climate and ESG innovation, I'm wondering where does the council stand right now on financial disclosures, on climate impact, nature impact, and what is the opportunity there? Where does the council want to be as a leader in the ecosystem?
So we have three great questions on new companies, on the council, and on disclosures.
I can take new companies. So working in a law firm with a very big venture, ESG, VC type of practice, we see, and we were talking about this earlier today, we have more than a dozen clients who have come in the past 2 weeks who basically are, you would call them startups in the space. I cannot stress enough, and I know Wes is floating around here somewhere, talk to Wes Geisenberg, talk about The Guardian, because one, I would say the advice to these companies is, or if you're investing in companies, is do not try to do everything in the ecosystem or the life cycle of what you need to move through to go from recognizing assets to bringing them to an exchange or to a registry. Take the part that you can do really well and work within the ecosystem in Hedera, because there are a number of organizations that are very much like yourselves that have built these other parts and have open sourced the code for these, which means that if you have funding if you're getting funding, if you're giving funding, spend that funding on the differentiator. Use what is already available in the ecosystem and get to market faster. That's part of it. And then the other part of it is, I mentioned CorpCom before, the Corporate Utilization Committee. Come to CorpCom, meet with us, get on the agenda to come in and talk about a use case. It is the best introduction for you to take an idea that you have safely and introduce it across a bunch of enterprises who actually can be your feeder system of the data and the assets that you need to actually get your business moving. So there's a lot of opportunity in both directions, and I will say that the startup community or the smaller company community that are really making an impact in building out this life cycle are the ability for the enterprises to actually come in and do this work. They cannot do it themselves. The smaller companies are agile, they're nimble, they're making progress. To do something in an enterprise and having to talk across the 50 different groups that you need to talk to get something going is very hard. You guys are the catalyst to actually making things happen in the enterprise in the other direction.
Well, so to answer your question on the VC aspect, you've got to really make sure they're going after a business outcome. Because a lot of times they're going after a tech feature, or, you know, to this idea of the open source. Use all of the capabilities that are currently available. But if they're going after a tech feature without a business outcome, it's not gonna, nobody's gonna buy it. So it's not commercializable, or, sorry, you can't commercialize it, sorry. So, and then to the other aspect, and sorry, not hitting you, Max, but what Paolo said earlier, it's completely transparent, right? We publish everything. So without that publication, without understanding what we're doing, I mean, what is blockchain supposed to enable? Transparency, so everybody can see. Now, I know private blockchain doesn't do that, but that's a whole other conversation. That might be why it's not doing as well. That's why ServiceNow decided to pick a public permission DLT. So when it comes right down to it, without that transparency again, you can't see where you're going.
Paolo, the last word.
Yeah, I mean, what can I say? In the aftermath of FTX, if you're not transparent and you do not do what you promise, you don't build trust. And trust is everything in this sector. So whatever it takes to get there, you need to do it. So that's so. For the VC, I would say we have a university networks, also some members working at a council members, so come to talk to us. We have a lot of students that are exercising and playing with the data technology, and we can have a lot of opportunities for young entrepreneurs, even from UCI, from LSE, from other universities that are council members. So I can see that also in this year and years to come, this will also be more empowered.
There was one more question, I can hit it quickly. On the social impact, the human impact at the beginning, and I think this is the question you're asking, but one of the things that, and again, if you look across the Guardian ecosystem, if you can't document what is going on at the beginning of a complex supply chain, then it is very hard to say that the rest of it is valid. So there are a number of organizations. I know that we're working, DLA is working with Microsoft on something called Project Athena, which is documenting worker conditions, human trafficking, all of these type of things that allow you to actually establish what is happening at the beginning of the circular economy or the supply chain. That is being done. I think it's the hardest part of the equation to solve, but there is a lot of work that's going into it. So I hope that answers the question, or at least touches on it a little bit.
So I want to thank you all for joining us for this discussion, and thank our great panelists